Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make some brief comments on this very important bill, the Cooperative Bill of 2024. Mr. Speaker, these three distinguished senators who are here were with me in the last parliament when we passed one piece of legislation which I was always praying, and yourself, Mr. Speaker, that it could be implemented. This is the warehousing receipt bill. Mr. Speaker, we are poor because we are not able to coordinate and to be able to make sure that we take care of our produce. When today I saw this cooperative bill, I decided that I will come and make some contribution which will allow me to be able to at least guide, the debate on this bill, because sometimes I think we try to over-legislate. And we're in the business of creating offices for certain individuals. One of the biggest problems that I have with any piece of legislation that comes up is that there is an establishment of the director of cooperatives in the national level. There is establishment of a director of cooperative in the county level. I've had a very negative experience, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of cooperatives, because the process is selective, it is predetermined, and once you become selective in the process of registering a cooperative society, and when you predetermine how even the bylaws should be drafted, that is a recipe for disaster. If, Mr. Speaker, we had fully implemented the Warehousing Receipt Act, today the farmers in Narok would not be using empty fields to be able to dry their wheat, would be able to put money, send money into county governments, set up warehouses, set up silos, set up dryers, so that the moisture content in wheat can be one that these millers can be able to come and buy, and farmers would be able to benefit. Today, when we come here with a very long bill, I'm still reading it, which has got about 284 pages long. My only conclusion is that we are actually going the wrong direction. We are over-legislating. We talk about devolution. Agriculture is devolved. By and large, when you try to interrogate this bill, Mr. Speaker, it talks about produce. How people can come together, work together to be able to produce. Today, we have a cabinet secretary in charge of cooperatives. But this bill wants to set up a director of cooperatives in the national level. Then what is the job of that cabinet secretary if we have a director in the national level? Agriculture is devolved. Health is devolved, but we are still clawing back on devolution. Mr. Speaker, I think this House, when it comes to the third reading of this bill, or the committee of the whole, we must go through the bill and scrutinize it. Go through the bill with a toothpick to ensure that, number one, we do not over-legislate. Number two, we do not create offices for particular individuals who will be living large, collecting money from farmers or members of a cooperative. They drive big SUVs, live in Karen, yet the farmers themselves struggle in terms of developing their produce, storing that produce, and then once they sell is where now these directors come and say, we want our levy. I've always had a problem, Mr. Speaker, with the Kenya Dairy Board, because I think it is completely misplaced. It doesn't understand the challenges that farmers go through. It doesn't understand the adulteration of the milk in this country. It doesn't understand the challenges that women in our counties face when they don't have a proper cold chain. I wish that Kenya Dairy Board was investing heavily in developing a good, cold chain, so that when a farmer milks, takes it directly to the cold chain and doesn't have to go through brokers. We must stop over-legislating. I wish this bill was talking about a process where the government will invest in the farmers, give subsidies to the farmers, set up cooperatives for free for farmers. Mr. Speaker, when in fact, I even spoke to the Cabinet Secretary. I was trying to register a cooperative in Narok. But the rounds and circles that I was taking, Mr. Speaker, I just ended up registering a limited liability company. And then I say, based on how I work with the farmers, I can give shares. So sometimes it's a bit frustrating. What we need to do is to sit down with the county governments. I would support the proposal of setting up a county director of cooperatives. And this office of the county director of cooperatives, not the national director of cooperatives, a county director of cooperatives. Let the cabinet secretary deal with the issues of cooperatives. When we go down to the county level, we can have a CCM in charge of agriculture who then appoints a director of cooperatives. When you appoint the director of cooperatives, you ensure the CCM or the CEO in charge of cooperative ensures that every county budgets for money that is supposed to build these cooperative movements. Mr. Speaker, about 10 years ago, I traveled to Brazil, and I went to study the cooperative system there. And I was mesmerized, Mr. Speaker. And that is when we came to debate the warehousing receipt bill then, which is an act now, at least everything to me was making sense. Cooperative movements in countries like Brazil, Mr. Speaker, have their own community banks where farmers, they have their own warehouses, they bring their produce, it's a cooperative. They have their membership there. It is not a matter of a big government, but rather a small government. But in this case, which seems to be misadvised in terms of where you want government to be in every little pocket, a big government is not going to be able to help us. Creating a job for a director of cooperative nationwide is not going to help us. The first thing we should do is to ask county governments, can you set up cooperative movements? In Narok County, we have 6 constituencies. We know what does well in Emurwedikir. We know what does well in Kilgoris. We know what does well in Narok South, Narok West, Narok East, and Narok North. Before I entered here, I was meeting with gentlemen from Narok North. Of course, they were disgruntled because of land issues. Some of them who were left out when Mao Forest was being surveyed. And they still have a genuine case. But these people are farmers. They produce wheat, barley. The most important thing is to bring them together, make sure they have a good silos to store those produce, make sure they have good dryers, not to be selling them to brokers who then come and turn part of Narok Central into a drying field. There's a place called El Mashariani. Before you get into Narok town, Mr. Speaker, literally 2 kilometers before you get into town, you will see some makeshift silos, but people don't even use those silos because of the moisture content. Then you will see a field which is about 20 acres. And during the harvesting season, Mr. Speaker, that field will be littered with just, grains. Down about 1 kilometer away, there's a Kenya Cereals and Produce Board. So people come individually, they come, they dry their wheat there. Once the wheat the moisture content has reduced is where now they sell and they take it to the silos for the millers to be able to come and buy. We need to do things differently and not only come up with such a huge bill, but develop legislation that can actually encourage a small government rather than a big government. Legislation that will ensure that it creates wealth rather than overburden farmers. When today the dairy board is saying, oh, you need to pay this levy. Tomorrow, with this act, these cooperative members have got to pay money. Why? We are being overtaxed on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the 4-tier structure of this cooperative, for me, is really a lot of bureaucracy for nothing. Why do you have to create 4 tiers? It is like the other piece of legislation we were discussing here the other day, Mr. Speaker, that now requires, I think it was the coffee bill, that now requires that a buyer be registered, be licensed, a seller be licensed, a broker be licensed. You're actually stifling innovation. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that we're living at a time when artificial intelligence is guiding the future. Tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, I'll be meeting students who we're sponsoring to be able to study agribusiness. Cooperative is one of the subjects that we are going to be discussing. But if tomorrow now I have to sit down and tell them, we have a bill that is proposing to have a 4-tier structure for cooperative movements, I'm sure most of them will be like, for what? If we had a database of how many cooperatives we have in this country, in Narrow County, for instance, and say we have 20 cooperative movements. Cooperative number 1 is for wheat farmers. Cooperative number 2 is for dairy farmers. Cooperative number 3, tea farmers. Cooperative number 4, livestock farmers. Then the next question we ask, how much are we supporting these cooperatives? Mr. Speaker, we had the Cabinet Secretary here the other day in charge of gender, and the subject of the day was the issue of women enterprises. If there is a way that we can be able to make sure that any piece of legislation we develop, we tie in all these government resources. There's a lot of money, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the agricultural ministry today. When the government wants to give coolers, they use the Ministry of Livestock. Can we find a way, similar to the way the Disaster Management Office used to work, where it was coordinating services from each and every ministry, so that when disasters strike, they support from the Ministry of Gender, they support from the Ministry of Housing, they support from the Ministry of Local Government then. Right now, if you're telling me that this cooperative, being a member of cooperative, gives you priority, and that becomes your security or your collateral, when you are applying for a loan from the Women Enterprising Fund, I'll be the first one to clap and say, now, that is progressive. That is building, creating wealth. But there's no nexus between this piece of legislation and the other piece of legislation, this department and the other department. We've heard of this notion that the minister actually said it here, that it's an all-government approach. Meaning, as a cabinet secretary in charge of interior, or as a cabinet secretary in charge of agriculture, if you go to a place, you should be in a position to respond to the issues being raised by that community or by those citizens. Any piece of legislation that we draft now should not be one that continues creating jobs for people, but for making things to happen. We need to be clear now that we are no longer in a unitary state of governance. We're in a devolved state of governance that does not require everything to be coordinated by the cabinet secretary. In other countries, Mr. Speaker, I'll give an example of the United States of America. They have school districts. I lived in Massachusetts, and in Concord has their own school district. You know, they get support from the federal government, they get support from the state government, they get support from the local government. But the way I see us moving ahead, it is like we are completely confused. It is like the national government always want to have control. I really do wish that sometimes my colleagues in the National Assembly would take time to read the pieces of legislation that they propose. Because once you read through these pieces of legislation, then you can be able to say and tell that we're in a different era. We are no longer at a time when everything has got to be controlled from a central level. Let us devolve everything. The agriculture is devolved. It is it's the backbone of this economy. This cooperative movement, Mr. Speaker, since I see my majority leader is, and I think the time is up, I'd wish that I could really speak on this. But this will be the first bill, Mr. Speaker, that I will seek your eye during the third reading, so that I can be able to really try to make sure that I make sense out of it. But otherwise, with those few remarks, let me allow the majority leader to make his remarks.
Thank you very much, Senator. I call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for indulging me. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I can seek your permission, Mr. Speaker, under Standing Order 1, to allow the extra 15 minutes so that I reply in 3 minutes and conclude. I'll not use the entire 15 minutes, but if you can permit, Mr. Speaker, even just an extra 5 minutes so that I don't have to rush.
Very well, I will extend.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For not more than 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll not even do more than 5. Mr. Speaker, you know, I wanted to respond to some of the things that my colleague, Senator Ledama, has said, so I needed time. Because, you know, Senator Ledama, I can tell when you have read a bill, and I can tell when you have just walked in and picked a bill and want to comment on it. You have said very many useful things that you can enrich this particular bill, which I agree with you, and that's something we must do. But if you had been in the House earlier and listened to the things our colleagues were saying about the challenges in the cooperative space, the need to ensure that governance and legacy issues are addressed spontaneously, then you would know the urgency with which we want to bring sanity to this space. You are aware, because I know you follow news in this country, of the Cusco scandal. That was enabled by weak legislation that exists. You can see that we are amending a statutory instrument, Senator Ledama, that 15, is it 15 now? After 15 years into the new constitution, we don't have a law governing the cooperatives movement. That's why even in your own Narok County, for example, despite the great potential that cooperatives have, people fear touching them because they know the minute you are more than 10, 50, 100, then there's no guarantee of safety of those returns. We must tighten that particular space to take us back to 1980s and 90s, if you recall, Senator Ledama, when people used to gather here at KICC during the annual Cooperatives Day, and leading cooperatives from across the country will come and be commended and rewarded for exceptional performance during the financial year. That is what we are seeking to achieve. I also mentioned during the moving of this bill, why this bill is this voluminous is because it is a combination of industry stakeholder views that has been collected the last 15 years. This is the third time this bill is coming to Parliament. We tried it in the 11th Parliament. I think it died in the National Assembly. Last Parliament, if you recall, we actually began this bill ourselves on the Senate side. But somehow, as is the tradition, when our bills get to the National Assembly, it died a natural death. This time we said we are lucky because it's their bill, and Senate is the upper house. We are not just upper for powers or anything. It's for prioritizing and knowing that there are things that are not worth fighting for, like who commenced the bill or not. If a bill is good, we separate on it. I therefore want to urge that you take the weekend, Senator Ledama, and improve on this bill. Read page by page, because it has very many important proposals that we went step by step in my moving notes, including, because I heard you, Mr. Speaker, mention, Senator Ledama mention on the issue of why you need a national director for cooperatives. It's because that is like the registrar of all these cooperatives. We have given one at the county, but remember, there are counties that, there are SACCOs and cooperatives that are trans-county. Like Imarisha SACCO, I'll give you an example. It is in Cheruiyot, it is in Narok, it is in Bomet. If you leave it to be handled by the county registrar alone, then what happens to issues that arise in a neighboring county and the rest? Therefore, there is need for coordination even at the national level, not at the level of a cabinet secretary, Mr. Speaker, because you understand, a cabinet secretary is the head of policy. But the day-to-day operations and running, you will need somebody at that particular level. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, there is a good reason for our colleagues to take time before we conclude on this. We still have a lot of time before we can conclude on the work. I know that the Committee on Labor actually tabled their report last week on this, which I want to urge members to read and appreciate what stakeholders said and why they feel this is of an urgent nature, including the comments actually. Take time, Senator Ledama, in the report of the Labor Committee, take time and read the memorandum that was sent by SASRA, the SACCO and Societies Regulatory Authority, on the challenges we are facing in that space, and more importantly, forget about the challenges, the opportunity cost that we are missing as a country by not regulating our SACCOs properly. That if we are able to do it, we may not even need all these banks that are all over here. That SACCOs are actually almost competing with banks. You know, many of our banks, what they do, they buy and sell government paper. They don't lend to the ordinary citizens. A stronger SACCO, Senator Ledama, if we strengthen our SACCOs, actually, you know the beauty of our SACCOs, it is SACCOs that lend actually to the people that we represent in this house. Very few of the people who vote for me to come to this house, Mr. Speaker, borrow from these commercial banks. Perhaps maybe hardly 10%. But more than 90% of my voters are members of a SACCO where they take loans and save in that particular. Therefore, it is in the interest of us as the representatives of the people, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we regulate our SACCOs properly and guide them to advance. Therefore, because this is at the second reading stage, and we have agreed, I've listened to comments, Senator Mogeni proposed certain, what are they called, amendments to this particular bill, Mr. Speaker. We need, I'm sure Senator Ledama, after you've done reading, you will compile quite a few. Senator Cheruiyot, I heard your comments also. You mentioned about things that you feel that we need to regulate so that we can build a stronger SACCO movement in this country, Mr. Speaker. This is what has built the so-called Asian tigers. It's because of investments such as this and being creative in their thinking, Mr. Speaker. Ensuring that they move over and beyond the call of duty. You know, Mr. Speaker, I mentioned earlier my disappointment with the former chair of the Budget and Finance Committee in the National Assembly yesterday and the things you were saying about NSSF. That NSSF, their duty is just to seek what he calls in theory optimal investments, Mr. Speaker, without defining what are these optimal investments, Mr. Speaker. You know, we have an NSSF that for the last 60 years has only occupied cabros, Mr. Speaker, and building estates in this country. Not thinking that if you go to the bows here at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, it is driven by pension funds from all over the world. People are coming to seek opportunities here. The largest shareholders in Safaricom, in EABL, I don't know which other company, Mr. Speaker. Pension funds just like our own NSSF seeking investment opportunities, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when our own pension fund tries to be creative, we cannot be the ones that are, as a leader, elected member of parliament, you are the one sending false hope and gloom, saying, oh, your money is about to disappear because NSSF has said they want to partner with other investments, with other investors, Mr. Speaker, to build on, for example, the Nakuru, what is it called? The Mausami Trironi road, Mr. Speaker. This is an investment opportunity that is available. I pointed, Mr. Speaker, that, for example, this Nairobi Expressway, isn't the member aware that the team that run, or the company that run this expressway, Mr. Speaker, borrows, Mr. Speaker, from savings of people in their home country. They come and invest in such a product and they recoup over the years. Have they heard that this entity has collapsed? In fact, there is more business than it can afford. That's why there is traffic nowadays, even on the expressway, especially during rush hours. Many people are continuing to use it, telling you that there is an opportunity. Therefore, we cannot allow, Mr. Speaker, ourselves as leaders, instead of being dealers in hope, Mr. Speaker, we become agents of gloom and hopelessness, Mr. Speaker, simply because we have fallen out of political favor. We must resist that kind of political culture, Mr. Speaker, and encourage our institutions to be bold. That is what we expect of NSSF. That is what we want out of SACCOs, Mr. Speaker, to be investors as well. It will be a good time, Senator Ledama or Kina, that your own SACCOs, after we have regulated them properly, that they come and invest here in Nairobi Securities Exchange. People from Ilmotiok, from, I don't know, Lulunga, and all the parts of Narok. Young men that can organize themselves. The young people that do business, boda boda, mama mbogas, and we trade them how to harness investment opportunities that are available. Kenya is a wealthy country. That member needs to know. Even the NSSF of Tanzania is here in Nairobi, just next to us in Upper Hill, investing in a building, trying to seek investment opportunity in Kenya. Then we are telling our own NSSF, oh, don't seek opportunities within your own country. Surely, we have to be, Mr. Speaker, bold and courageous and not be leaders that misinform our people. I had promised, Mr. Speaker, not to take more than 5 minutes. I see I already done that. That was just a comment with regards to opportunities that are available, especially to ordinary citizens, those that flood our SACCOs, given that this bill is in honor of them. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to, with those main remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply. Pursuant to Standing Order number 66.3, I request, Mr. Speaker, that you defer the putting of a question until a later date. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The putting of the question is thus deferred, and I appoint Tuesday, 27th May, as the day when the question will be put. 27th May, 2025. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:37 p.m. and having concluded the business for which I extended the hours of sitting, pursuant to Standing Order 34-2A, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, next week, Tuesday, 27th May 2025.